He lost. James Damore lost. He was fired at Google for simply, he says, expressing his point of view, a conservative point of view, in which he outlined to some of his colleagues at work that Google was being unfair, questioned the role of biology in career choices, and some left-of-center biases that put conservative workers in some peril. The case was brought to the National Labor Relations Board, and it was there that the NLRB decided that he didn't have a case, that Google did, that his comments bordered on discriminatory, and that is why he was canned. James Damore is here right now. His attorney, Harmeet Dhillon, are also here. Welcome to you both. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here, Neil.
All right, let's get to this a little bit, because there's so much to get into. And James, the first thing is, this started with you discussing among your colleagues points of view that were opposed to what? The way Google hired, the results of that hiring, political correctness. How would you describe it?
Yeah, it was partly just the shaming within the culture, and also discriminatory practices in hiring.
Now, there you had outlined biological differences between men and women and why there were so few female employees of equal stature to male employees. That's something that happens at a lot of companies. I believe 17% of the workforce at Google had women in such positions. When it came to leadership, fewer than 1 in 5 are women. How did you address that, or what did you say about that? Because the company says that you implied that women weren't up to that task biologically.
I simply use the psychological research to explain why there may be fewer women interested in current tech jobs, and how we could change those jobs to make them more welcoming to more women.
In saying that, you brought up, and you write very well, very clear, but you cited, among other reasons, that women might not have the temperament for moving beyond. You said neuroticism, higher anxiety, lower stress tolerance. This may contribute to the higher levels of anxiety that women report, and that the lower number of women in high-stress jobs. Now, a lot of women got upset with that. That was obviously a deal changer for Google. What did you say when they questioned you about that?
This is a well-founded finding in psychology, that women report higher levels of stress on surveys. And Google was using that as evidence that women were being discriminated against. And I simply wanted to show that, no, women tend to experience more stress, and if we make the job just less stressful, less 80-hour weeks, then we can make it just more appealing to more women.
All right. Well, here's the chance I want to talk to your female lawyer. And maybe you can help me with this, Harmeet, because when the company CEO was asked about this during, I think, the Davos summit, he said, as a company, we support freedom of speech, but you have to understand the context of the workplace. The representation of women is very, very low. It's a moral imperative that we create an environment that is more supportive of women. But he went on to say this was not a biological issue. This was, a fundamental issue. And the points that your client was making were deemed to be discriminatory. What do you think?
Well, Neil, there's no denying that there are differences between men and women. And so I think that's a legitimate point. A lot of social justice warriors in the workplace and outside don't want to accept that. But now the question is, how do companies deal with it? And James was trying to provide some constructive solutions. What Google does, and many companies do instead, is employ quotas to mandate the hiring of women, despite the fact that the pipeline coming out of our engineering institutions is only about 20% women today. We need to change that as a society if we want more women to have those jobs, but quotas are illegal under our employment laws. So while Google may prefer and have what they call a moral imperative, they also must abide by United States employment law, and there are employment discrimination laws that apply both at the federal level and in California that protect the rights of workers to comment about these issues and to not be discriminated against on the basis of their gender, their race, their
views,
political
right?
orientation,
in James's case,
or
James,
their viewpoint.
You believe it was your viewpoint, your conservative viewpoint, in what is deemed to be a liberal working environment that worked against you. Did you have any other instances of that where you felt ostracized or you were laughed at, picked on? I know the company did have to respond to an emailer who had threatened you, but did it go beyond that?
Yeah, there are many instances of shaming within our culture, and if you look through the lawsuit, there's hundreds of pages of this just repeated over and over. So I wasn't an isolated incident.
All right, so are there other conservative or right-leaning thinkers like yourself or workers who are afraid to speak up? And what is condoned versus what is not condoned?
Yeah, so recent surveys suggest about 80% of conservatives feel like they can't bring up social issues at work in Silicon Valley. And it's really unclear what exactly you can or can't say, which just adds to the chilling effect.
So when you said you couldn't come through with your views, but you still wrote what you wrote and shared with your colleagues what you shared with your colleagues, did you ever bounce it off your superiors first?
Yeah, I actually had many one-on-one conversations, and a manager actually suggested that I spread it further. So it wasn't clear that this was wrong at all, and it was only once it became viral that the company started responding and denouncing me.
All right, so the company was saying at the time to act as it did, and this is something echoed by the National Labor Relations Board to make the decision it did, is that employers must be permitted to nip in the bud, I think that would be you, the kinds of employee conduct that could lead to a hostile workplace rather than waiting until an actionable hostile workplace has been created before taking action. That, in other words, if your views were left to go unaddressed and by extension make women in this case feel uncomfortable, then that's reason enough for you to go. What do you say?
So, Neil, if I can address this issue about the National Labor Relations Board. First of all, James withdrew his National Labor Relations Board charge, and we're focusing on the class action lawsuit that we filed. So that is one misconstruction. The other is that the National Labor Relations Board...
They both take the same view on this particular... That's where they're coming... The other things are raised with the company.
They really don't, actually. So the National Labor Relations Board, National Labor Relations Act, has a very limited scope. And what was being covered there was a concept called protected concerted activity. In our lawsuit, we talk about equal employment norms that are not covered or governed by the National Labor Relations Act. So longstanding precedent in the National Labor Relations Act has held that conduct like James's actually was protected. And at the regional level here in San Francisco area, the National Labor Relations Board had already decided to move forward with James's case. So then we had one lawyer in the National Labor Relations Board who wrote this memo. It's an advice memo. It's not a ruling. There was no evidence taken. There was no hearing, and nobody was sworn. So it's interesting that they released this thing a month after they wrote it. But James doesn't have a case in front of the National Labor Relations Board anymore, so I think it was kind of odd and gratuitous to do that. Google did lobby them to restrict worker rights, and they've done that in a number of different areas. So that's an ongoing thing that Google is doing.
All right, well, here's what we're going to help me with.